Welcome back to Echoes of the Past, where history speaks and we listen. I'm Emma.
And I'm Jake. And today we're diving into one of the most haunting maritime disasters of all time, the sinking of the Titanic.
More than a century later, the story of the Titanic still grips us. Maybe because it was a perfect storm of ambition, class division, heroism, and tragedy.
And icebergs. Don't forget icebergs.
Hard to forget the thing that took down a so-called unsinkable ship.
Let's set the scene. It's April 10th, 1912. The RMS Titanic departs from Southampton, England, bound for New York City. It's the largest ship in the world at the time, nearly 900 feet long, and a symbol of modern engineering.
And luxury. The first-class passengers were living in what might as well have been a floating palace. Ballrooms, dining halls, marble bathrooms. But if you were in third class, your experience was, let's just say, less glamorous.
Which brings us to one of the biggest talking points, class division. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a floating microcosm of Edwardian society. When disaster struck, survival often depended on your social status.
Exactly. Of the 2,200 passengers and crew on board, over 1,500 died. And the survival rate for first-class passengers was about 62%. Third class, less than 25%.
So what happened that night, April 14th, just before midnight?
The Titanic hits an iceberg. Despite being warned multiple times about icebergs in the area, the ship was speeding along at around 22 knots.
The iceberg scraped along the starboard side, damaging the hull and flooding the compartments. The ship could float with 4 flooded compartments, but not 6.
And they only had lifeboats for about half the people on board. Some boats left half full.
Because many believed the ship wasn't really sinking. There was this deep trust in the technology, in the myth of invincibility.
We can't talk Titanic without mentioning some of the stories that emerged, like the musicians who kept playing as the ship went down.
Or Margaret Molly Brown, the American socialite who helped row a lifeboat and tried to go back for survivors, earning her the nickname the Unsinkable Molly Brown.
And then there's Captain Edward Smith. Some say he went down with the ship in a final act of duty. Others say he was paralyzed by indecision. His legacy is still debated.
The Titanic was rediscovered in 1985, over 12,000 feet below the surface of the Atlantic. And since then, we've seen exhibitions, movies, hello James Cameron, and renewed interest in maritime safety.
In fact, because of Titanic, lifeboat regulations were changed, maritime laws were rewritten, and ship safety became a much bigger priority.
So in a way, the tragedy wasn't completely in vain. But the human cost was enormous and personal.
It reminds us how fragile life is, how arrogance, miscommunication, and inequality can magnify disaster.
And how stories, like the Titanic, keep echoing through time.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave us a review and share it with your fellow history buffs.
And we'll be back next week with another moment from the past. Until then, stay curious.